Good evening and welcome to the Chanel Show. Tonight we've got a studio guest, FCCC CEO Joel Abraham, and we're going to look at the increasing food prices, among other things. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Welcome, Arnold. Thank you for having me on the show. Indeed, the issue of escalating food price seems to be everywhere, and so it's good for the people to know what's happening.
Absolutely, CEO. CEO, first of all, what is FCCC's role when it comes to food prices?
Thank you, Arnold. So FCCC is a competition as well as a consumer protection regulator. Our role is to, one, stimulate competition in the market so that market forces or forces of demand and supply could bring markets to equilibrium levels, which means that basically market forces are able to decide. So we stimulate competition in the market, and where none exists, we measure or put a yardstick to show the market and ensure that we mimic a competitive market. And two is to look at consumer protection, so consumer complaints, rental complaints, market monitoring, etc. And the third function that we have is to do with pricing, which is regulating industries which are either monopolies or near monopolies. So these are, in a nutshell, these are our functions and the major things that we do. Specific to food pricing, there is a food price control order, which is by policy of the current government. They want to regulate certain items to look at affordability of people. So when we talk about regulating food prices, so there are two categories of food prices. There would be price control items and there would be non-price control items, right? And both count as food items. So if I can give you an example, say edible oil is under price control. So we've got canola, soybean oil under price control, but you would have things like olive oil, which is a premium product that's not under price control. Say jasmine rice is not under price control, but long grain rice is under price control. So you will have different products in the market that are placed under price control. And when we do price control or any sort of price regulation, we look at four things. People will generally focus on affordability and say, why is this not cheap? You have to look at affordability, but you must balance it out with reliability of the product coming into the country, the availability of the product, and the sustainability. So you need to have business practice in a sustainable manner. So moving forward, you will not see the item disappear. If I give you an example, say long grain rice, right? It's of, say, right now it would be about $16, $17, right? Or $15, it's got a range. So in that range, we could tomorrow decide and say, okay, let's make it $10. But what would that mean? If it is artificially pegged low, which is not conducive to what the market is offering or what the market is selling, then obviously the trader will stop bringing that product into the country. And so you will have affordability. You'll say, we could go and advertise, there's a rice that you can buy for 10 kilos, but it won't be available, right? So availability is not there. The reliability of that product coming into the country is going to be affected, and the business won't be sustainable, right?
So you're saying this has a bearing on why the food prices have seen spikes?
So in fact, what I've done today is I've gotten the details of some food items, and I know people have been asking. So I thought, let's get into the system, and the FCCC has got access into the FRCS CUDA system. So that is where what we do is verify import prices. Now, just to let everybody know, if you just go into Google and type global food prices 2021, it will tell you the first few searches that will come up is the UN Food Price Index, or the UN Food and Agriculture Organization has said. If you just look at the September report, UN Global Food Index shows that prices have increased 33% globally. In the last 12 months, constant increase, July being the exception, there was a minor decrease and then it shot back up again, right? So if you compare prices now to the same period last year and the year before, there's been a 33% increase globally, and we've got the data to prove it. Let's take one particular product, right? So say soybean oil of a particular brand, right? Golden soybean oil. It was imported, right? Punjab soybean oil has been imported. Punjab's canola oil, golden canola oil. Then you've got sun-grown rice. You've got long grain rice. So there's various products, but let's look at one, right? Let's look at one particular brand of soybean oil. For confidentiality purpose, I won't name the particular brand, but this particular brand of soybean oil was imported on the 30th of April 2019, right? At that time, the value or the landed cost per metric ton into Fiji was 900, right? Is 900 US dollars per metric ton.
Okay.
If you look at the same product, right, no changes, 4th July 2021, the value per metric ton landed price in US is $1,755.
Okay.
Wholesale price change in Fiji at that time when it was $900 was $69.94, and retail price was $3.71, right? And wholesale price now is $110.48, and retail price is $5.68. So you will see from $3.41 to $5.86, there has been a substantial increase. So when people say there's been an increase, we're not denying that there's not been an increase. There's been an increase, but this increase is a result of
something we can't help.
We can't help. And you look at another brand of soybean oil.
Sorry, Joel. So we can acknowledge that because of the import prices and because of the increases, there definitely has been price increases. Is there any strategy to mitigate some of this? Because people are feeling this,
yes,
especially with COVID.
Yeah, so what we've been doing is we've been reviewing the food price control order. We're making sure that we're having those discussions with businesses, so that one, the first discussion is the goods must be available, right? So we're focusing on availability. Then we want to look at the sustainability. Whether Fiji is a very small country, right? There are global players that are driving demand. We want to make sure that Fiji does not miss out, right? So when our people go to all these larger factories to buy products like oil, rice, other commodities, that we are able to get these products into Fiji, right? And the global shipping patterns and all of those things are not disrupted, and goods continue to flow in. Right? So the first strategy is making sure that goods are available, right? As far as affordability is concerned, yes, we do have a strategy. We've been looking at making some particular brands available, having discussions with traders to say, are you able to talk to your suppliers to lock in the price? Now, you'll see that our form of regulation is the closest to a market-based scenario. So we are not going and imposing price control, right? We're not saying, this is what we're telling you, a command and control system where we tell you, you do what we tell you.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the business model is sustainable,
Okay.
so that the people of Fiji continue to get high quality goods. So it's not only about price, it's a price quality system that we use. So we want quality products to come in, and we want them to come in at an affordable price. And so what we do is we limit the markup or the margin that the company is able to charge. In some instances, if you talk to these particular supermarkets or businesses, the importers, they'll tell you. In some instances, the margins are about 4%, 5%, 6%.
What about traders who, mess around with the system? They're taking advantage of COVID and perhaps giving extra markup. Are you monitoring for that?
Yes, so our people are out on the field on a daily basis, apart from doing COVID safety inspection. So
Yeah.
the reason the Ministry of Health appointed FCCC is because our people were out and about on the field. So 19th April, as soon as we found out that the second wave had hit, 20th April, we started our inspections. From 20th April till now, we've conducted more than 11,000 inspections. We go out into areas, we conduct inspection. For a 1 year period, we've got 106 cases filed in court, right? While COVID is going, we understand that people are raising concern. We do investigate unscrupulous traders, we do take them to court, and we want to make sure that we also follow the process of natural justice. Just because this COVID doesn't mean that traders' rights are taken away or consumer rights are taken away. So we find that balance. So while we determine the prices, while we limit the margins and the markups, we also want to ensure that traders who are found breaching are given their day in court.
Yeah.
And so we file the matter and take them to court. In the last year or so, 106 cases in court. All in all, we've got more than 450 cases in court.
That was Joel Abraham, ladies and gentlemen, talking about why there's been an increase in food prices. After the break, we look at rent and rent freeze. Welcome back. Housing is one of the most important sectors for any economy. We'll talk to Joel Abraham, FCCC CEO, about Fiji's housing sector and talk a little bit about the rent freeze. Joel, can you explain the rent freeze for our viewers?
Yeah, so rent freeze was a policy tool that government had actually put in place from 2nd of March 2007 to counter the impact of rental prices shooting up, right? The only exception there being that when there is a new property that's developed, right, or a new house that's made, and if you're giving a particular house or particular flat on rent, then the first letting is not subject to rent free. So market forces can, so it's a hybrid system. So the market forces can set the first rent. So say if you were to build your new house, you could give it out on rent at whatever price, right? And given the market forces, you determine. But once you determine and the tenant starts paying, rent freeze kicks in, meaning you cannot increase it. Now, this was to assist tenants, making sure that landlords did not hike the price up. There's a demand for housing stock, and simply if you pick up your phone on a Saturday, go to the classified sections in the newspapers, you give a call, by 8, 9 a.m. all the houses to lets are gone. So people continuously are moving and looking at better options, and so rent freeze was put in place to protect the people. Now, that being said, there is a need to phase out the rent free system. There is a need to ensure that we have a robust legislation. Right now, the rental legislation is fragmented, so you've got, if you want to know what amount of rent is fair, there's a Fair Rents Act, right? That's currently with the local government. You've got Public Health Act that talks about the condition of the house. So if you say the house is leaking or it's not in a particular order, you've got the health inspectors with the various municipalities that come and looks at that. So it's there.
So you said rent freeze needs to be phased out eventually.
Yeah.
Are you working on something to?
Yes. So we have worked on a legislation called the Landlords and Tenants Bill. We have made submissions. In fact, it was quite disappointing when we took it for consultations. We did not get many feedback. In fact, in the Suva-Nasori corridor, we found that in a total of 3 rounds of consultations that we did, only 8 people turned up. Oh. Right? In the whole Suva-Nasori corridor, in one session, I remember sitting at Rishikul College back when there was no COVID, we were doing these consultations. We sat there for 4 straight hours, nobody turned up. So
4 hours?
Yes. So there is a matter of public policy, and rental affects everybody, right? Suva-Nasori corridor being the highest where there's stock of houses going for rent. Unfortunately, people don't participate in this, and that has delayed the process. We had given it to Parliament, and His Excellency the President, when he made his announcement in Parliament last year, he had said that those Landlords and Tenants Act would be one of the legislations being looked at. So definitely it's something that we want to do. It's with the Ministry and the Solicitor General's office. They are working on it because now it needs to go to Parliament. Unfortunately, I think due to COVID, we are not able to go out and do the various consultations. But as we cross the second phase, and with the 4th of October coming and more restrictions being eased out, that is on top of our agenda, looking at landlords and tenant matters. In fact, with COVID, one of the highest number of complaints we're receiving is to do with landlords and tenant matters. And one would think that there are tenants complaining, but there are landlords who are also complaining against tenants. Because there are people on both sides that are trying to take advantage.
What kind of complaints are you getting from landlords?
So tenants playing truant, not paying their rent on time. The instances where people are being affected because of lockdowns, because of cutbacks on jobs, reduced hours. But there are people who are still very much employed that have not been affected, that are not paying their rent and saying, look, I've been affected by
Taking
COVID.
Advantage.
Yeah. So people are trying to take advantage. What we have continued to say is the rental agreement is a private contract between the landlord and tenant. So if you're not paying now, right, you'll have to pay it sometime in the future, because that is what you owe to the landlord. So it's not that it's they're forgiving it, and and some landlords have come and said, look, I don't want this many months rent because My tenant has been with me for 7-8 years, and I can see she or he is struggling. So we'll do that. They're very nice people on both sides, but they are very bad people on both sides as well. We've seen the worst come out. In fact, if I could repeat what the UN General Secretary said, he said, look, COVID-19 is not a health crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. And at this point in time, we need to look at all these things from a humanitarian lens as well. And there have been instances that I just came back from looking at a particular complaint that was registered this morning. The landlord is sitting in New Zealand, the caretaker came and disconnected water, electricity. Now, that is in breach of the constitutional rights. There are people who are forcefully evicting people, right? The constitution ensures that you have got freedom from arbitrary evictions. Now, if the landlord thinks that doesn't want the tenant anymore, there are processes under the law. So please follow the processes under law. Don't take the law into our own hands. But what we've been seeing, and it's a worrying trend, is that there are landlords or caretakers who are deciding to take the law into their own hands. So what they're doing is they're forcefully evicting tenants, or they're disconnecting water, electricity in a bid to push them out.
Right.
These are violations of the constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What recourse do tenants and landlords have if there are certain issues that crop up?
Yeah, so what we do is on a case-by-case basis, what we do is we offer mediation to try and amicably resolve it through alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Now, the only reason is because taking it through the courts may take a lot more time, right? So what we do is we try and bring a resolution which is a win-win situation for both parties. The instances where they don't want to go for mediations, right? So there have been instances where landlords have cut out utilities that they don't want to. In those instances, what we do is we investigate, and if we have sufficient ground to charge the landlord, we file an injunction in the court for the court to compel the landlord to provide those utilities, because these are basic amenities. I mean, cutting somebody's water meter off is yeah, I mean,
it's horrible. So if I'm a tenant, I'm a landlord. All I have to do is come to FCCC.
Yep.
So very quickly to end the segment, Joel. So I'm a tenant. I'm charging, say, $500 a month in rent. I cannot increase that at the moment. And that goes on till December.
31st December.
So heading into December, are we going to see an extension of the rent freeze, or is there going to be some different legislation ready by then?
Well, we will not speculating at the moment. The team is currently undertaking a review of the rental market, which we do every year. And as part of that, we make policy recommendations to the minister. And part of the policy recommendation can be that we can recommend to continue, or we recommend to phase it out. How do we phase it out? We do know that there are certain areas or certain stock of housing that is on the higher end, right? Occupied by expatriates or by entities or by high income individuals, right? And the idea of the rent freeze, or the policy intention, was to look at safeguarding the vulnerable in the community, right? Those whose income are on the lower end, low to middle income earners. So we are looking at whether there is a need to phase out rent freeze, and should we start from the top? Should we start phasing it out from the top? Is there a need to maybe peg it to the changes in inflation, CPI? So we're considering various policy options. We've not formed an opinion yet, so I would not like to speculate whether it will continue or whether it will cease.
That's good to hear. After the break, we take a look at misleading advertising. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen a lot in the media and in Parliament about misleading advertising and the media. Last year, the FCCC released this media release. The Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission has warned traders who sell advertising services to refrain from providing inaccurate, inflated, or irrelevant information and statistics to mislead Fijian consumers. Traders who are found engaging in these practices will be charged for breaching the FCCC Act 2010 and face fines of up to $250,000 per offence and 10 years in prison. It is unfortunate that some unscrupulous traders are taking advantage of the lack of expertise in the marketing industry to sell their services at an inflated price to businesses and organizations. Traders who don't provide verifiable statistics on claims, such as the number of people their medium reaches, or that fail to live to the promised results, both on traditional and new digital mediums, are guilty of misleading consumers by falsely representing the effectiveness of their product and will be charged under Section 77 of the FCCC Act. Joel, this matter has been discussed last week. It's been all over Parliament how the media doesn't do their research. The media misleads potential advertisers and their customers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the media is a different kettle of fish, When we talk about regulation, in every day, people continue to regulate. Whether you holding your child's hand before they cross the street, that's a regulating behavior. You say don't eat too much sweets, it's a regulating behavior. So regulation is everywhere, right? Mainstream regulation, as far as businesses are concerned, it's there to protect consumer interest, right? And whether you're a small business, whether you're a medium-sized business, where you're an everyday Fijian, right? It doesn't matter. Everybody is a consumer of something, right? Whether you're the president or you're a farmer, you're still a consumer. Now, as far as the media goes, it is quite important that they also, while it is their role in a democracy to hold government accountable, the question always is who audits the auditors, So the media also needs to be held accountable. Everybody needs to be held accountable, specifically from the press release that you were reading. So what we've done is we looked at certain practices in the mainstream media market where in order to gain revenue, they were going out and saying, look, we've got a reach of 700,000 people, we've got a reach of this many thousand people, we've got a newspaper circulation of 18,000, 25,000. Now, it must be clear that when you are selling a product and that product is based on a premise, right? Or there is a cause and effect. You're saying, oh, my circulation is 700,000, my circulation is 25,000. That induces me to advertise with you, right? And why do businesses advertise? Businesses advertise because it's not like because they want to spend money. They advertise because they want consumers to know more about their goods and services, right? And which means they want more revenue coming out of it. So in the event that you are advertising based on misleading statistics or misleading representation, what's happening is you're not getting full bang for your buck. So what happens is businesses start losing out. So we are not saying don't go and seek advertising or don't go and talk to different businesses. We are saying if media as an entity is going out in a bid to get revenue. Now this has nothing to do with their news reporting, right? It should not be confused, right? As soon as you say media and regulation, people stand up and want to shoot you. They say, oh, you're trying to regulate the media.
This is more advertising.
This is more towards advertising. It's a business practice. So the media entities, which have a commercial arm, in order to gain revenue, as part of a business practice, we felt they were giving out some statements that were highly vague, and people were relying on these vague statistics, right? They were not telling people how they've covered their statistics. Say, for example, if there's a link on your website, right? Sometimes people will not stay on that link for long. They might open it and close it, open it and close it, right? Or they might not read it. Or somebody must have forwarded a link. They open it, they say, oh, I'm not interested, right? Now, what happens is when you go and you make a representation and say, when you advertise with us, 700,000 people are going to see it. No, 700,000 people are not going to see it, right? In total, maybe 700,000 people over a long period of time may have visited your website. But if I place an advertisement with you for this mask, 700,000 people are not going to see it. In fact, maybe 10,000 people are going to see it, or maybe 2,000 people are going to see it. So what we are asking for is like any other business. If media is engaging in a business practice, do so in an ethical manner. That's all.
So businesses are spending money, thousands of dollars in advertising, but they're not seeing returns. And this is impacting them, especially during COVID.
Especially during COVID, because businesses want to make money, right? And everybody is suffering. Right now, they're putting money into media organizations, or they're giving out all this advertising space, paying for all this advertising space. And you find that they're not getting all of this, the returns that they're after. And this does not only include mainstream media companies, right? It also includes these newer companies that are popping up, the smaller companies that are popping up that have got billboards, right? They say, oh, there's so much traffic going through our billboards, There is no way to verify how much traffic has gone around a particular route, right? So you're saying 10,000 people are going to see your billboard. There's no way to verify that. So if you're selling your product based on something that cannot be verified, that's unethical.
So what's the plan to stop this unethical?
Well, the FCCC has, in fact, had COVID not hit us, we were preparing a terms of reference to announce a market study or a market investigation into this practice. Although COVID has basically meant that we need to reallocate our resources and focusing. Right now, our focus is on COVID safety measures and the health protocols. This has not gone off our table. In fact, this is something that is still there. We are still looking at this particular practice, and as soon as things normalize, this is one of the first things that we'll do is then we'll go into the market and look at the practices. Now, these practices are all historical practice, so it's not like the media can now go and change it, because people have already placed reliance and given them business based on what they were told. And in fact, some media entities, they're putting these statistics on their business cards that they're giving, their sales executives are giving out. It becomes very difficult to verify these statistics, and if FCCC as a competent regulatory authority responsible for consumer protection cannot verify it, then how do you expect an average consumer to go and verify it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of misleading advertising and exaggerated statistics, we spoke to Consumer Council. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it to the show, but we talked about the USP matter. Now, Consumer Council gave a very strong media release, warning USP, basically, to not mislead Fijians. Has FCCC looked at it? Was it misleading, and what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, per se, I saw the press release by the Consumer Council. That matter has not been referred to us. So the FCCC is the competent body responsible for consumer protection in Fiji, meaning we are the only enforcement agency. So the Consumer Council is there as an advocacy body for consumers. Now, if
Consumer Council gets a complaint, they have to refer it to FCCC.
Yes, if you want the matter to be investigated and some action to be taken, right?
And they haven't referred this USP matter yet.
No,
they just wrote a release.
Yeah, they have not referred it yet. But should they do, we would be more than glad to have a look at it. I've not personally gone in and looked at it. Prima facie, from what I read from the Consumer Council article, they were quoting the consumer protection legislation, which is misrepresentation. So when you're making a representation, the basic test is what you call a reasonableness test. So a reasonable person listening to what you're saying, would they know what you're saying? I give you an example, right? There's this business tactic of advertising things saying free, right? But sometimes it's not free. You have to opt in to get some things free, right? Historically, we've seen telco companies saying, you get free internet, but you have to get the plan for $2.99. So it's not free, you're paying $2.99. So there was a case in Australia, ICCC versus Nationwide Newspapers, where the courts held that when you're using things like this as a marketing tactic, right? So this was to do with marketing. So you need to accurately and adequately dispel the magnetism of the word free, because a reasonable person, when they hear free, they think, let me go and get this. So they go and spend, right? Similarly, in this case, if it's to do with ranking, right? So ranking comes with prestige. Everybody wants to be associated with prestige, right? If I had an option, I'd say I want to go to Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Stanford, right? If I had the ability or the affordability or the financial means to do so, I would have loved to go there, right? If somebody came to me tomorrow and said USP was the number one university in the world, or University of Fiji or FNU was the number one university, though, I'd probably leave USP and join FNU, or vice versa. So these rankings, they have this appeal to them. There's a certain degree of magnetism. So when you applying the same legal principle, right, of marketing, when you use that legal principle and you're saying I'm ranked in the top 10 universities in the world, you must then dispel the magnetism by giving the to say, look, not everybody participated. This is top 10 of maybe the small batch that. So when you do sampling and you talk about things like this, it is important, especially when you're using it as as a marketing gimmick, because that is meant to attract people. So a parent thinking of sending their children to school will say, oh, I need to send them to the top 10 university in the world, which is...
So it is misleading marketing essentially.
Yeah, I mean, prima facie it would be. We have not gone in and investigated and established the various legal elements. You see, unlike Consumer Council, I mean, they are an advocacy body. We've got a duty of care towards the university, towards the respondent. So they would, we would accord them the process of natural justice. So we would say, this is the assertion that is made, now can you prove this?
Very quickly, we're pretty much out of time. So very quickly, Joel, is FCCC going to investigate this? And if USP has been found breaching the law, are they going to be taken to task?
Well, much like for anybody else in the market, I mean, it could be anybody, right? Not USP, anybody that engages in misleading and deceptive conduct, right? If we find that to be true after a rigorous process of investigation, which is independent and fair, then of course they'd be taken to task, as is the case with anybody. So just because it's USP, we not treat them differently. Just because it's a large entity, we don't treat them differently, or a sole trader. Anybody that breaches the law, we accord them the same process. They get the process to make a representation to us, and then we take it from there.
Okay. That's all we have time for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you learned something useful today about misleading advertising, rent, and of course, food prices. Until next week, good evening and take care.